August 4, 2024, Hoffman, North Carolina. A neighbor's frantic 911 call breaks the Sunday morning quiet. "I heard gunshots next door. Please hurry." When Richmond County deputies arrive at the modest home on McCoy Drive, they find a locked bedroom door. As they attempt to breach it, a single gunshot rings out from inside. What they discover next stops them cold. 38-year-old Kanisha Nealy, lying motionless on the floor, multiple bullet wounds in her body. Nearby, her husband Sheldon Maurice Nealy, 46, dead from a self-inflicted gunshot. But this wasn't just another domestic violence call gone wrong. This was the bloody finale to a relationship that began with a Facebook message while Sheldon sat in a prison cell serving a 12-year sentence. "He hit me on Facebook like, 'Let me take you out,'" Kanisha once posted, knowing damn well he was incarcerated. What drives a successful woman, a CNA with her own home, a business degree, and 3 daughters, to marry a man behind bars? And what happens when prison walls no longer separate fantasy from reality? Tonight, on Shadows of Crime, we're breaking down how a prison romance turned into a death sentence, and why the warning signs that could have saved Kanisha's life were ignored until it was too late. Before she became another statistic, Kanisha Miranda Harrison Nealy was building a life most people would envy. At 38, she'd hustled her way to stability in Hoffman, North Carolina. Working as a certified nursing assistant, she spent her days caring for others, a career that fit her naturally giving personality. But Kanisha wasn't content with just one path. She'd earned her business administration degree and recently obtained her license to become a bail bondsman, proving her ambition stretched beyond a single career. The crown jewel of her achievements? Purchasing her own home on McCoy Drive, the same house that would later become a crime scene. That property represented everything she'd worked for: independence, security, a safe place for her daughters to grow up. And those daughters were her world. 12-year-old Elia, 5-year-old Jalia, and baby Kamauri, just 1 month old when her mother was killed. According to the GoFundMe page created after her death, Kanisha wore many hats and made many accomplishments, but of them all, she was most proud of being a phenomenal mother to her 3 beautiful daughters. Friends described Kanisha as someone who didn't meet strangers. Her smile lit up rooms, her personality drew people in. The GoFundMe page stated, "Her love for people, especially her friends and family, her ambition and motivation was unmatched." This wasn't a woman desperate for attention or love. This was someone who had her shit together, a homeowner, a professional, a mother who provided for her kids. So how did someone like Kanisha end up connecting with a convicted felon serving a 12-year sentence? For a woman who seemed to make all the right moves in life, this decision stands out as the one that would ultimately cost her everything. Drop a comment if you think social media has made dangerous relationships more accessible. Would Kanisha have ever crossed paths with Sheldon if not for that Facebook message? What starts as a Facebook message evolves into something more dangerous. Kanisha and Sheldon's relationship quickly moved from online messages to phone calls that stretched into hours. Prison visits became the highlight of her schedule, sitting across from a man who'd been convicted of assault with a deadly weapon with intent to kill. Sheldon wasn't shy about his intentions. He proposed to Kanisha not once, but twice. After initially turning him down, she accepted his second proposal. On December 17, 2021, they made it official. A prison wedding with Sheldon still in custody, still serving his 12-year sentence for violent crimes. What did Kanisha see in him? Maybe it was the controlled environment, the safety of knowing glass and guards separated them. Maybe it was the fantasy of redemption, of being the woman who could change a man others had given up on. Or perhaps it was the version of himself he carefully crafted in those calls and letters, a version that couldn't physically hurt her. Online, Kanisha painted their relationship as a fairy tale. She called him her king in posts, sharing their love story without shame. The comment section filled with mixed reactions, some friends supporting her happiness, others questioning her judgment. The warning signs were there from the beginning. Sheldon's record wasn't just a minor offense. He had convictions dating back to 1994, robbery with a dangerous weapon, assault with a deadly weapon, inflicting serious injury, drug charges. A pattern of violence that spanned decades. But Kanisha believed in second chances. When Sheldon was released from prison in November 2022, she welcomed him into her home. The home she'd purchased with her own money, the home where her daughters slept. His parole ended on June 9, 2023. Less than 6 months later, in December 2023, police would respond to their first domestic violence call at the residence. But we'll get to that. For now, imagine the moment when prison fantasy collided with reality, when the man who wrote love letters and made promises through prison glass was suddenly standing in her kitchen, sleeping in her bed, interacting with her children. The fairy tale was about to turn into a nightmare. Hit subscribe if you want to see more stories about relationships that hide dark truths beneath the surface. The transition from prison visits to living together happened fast, too fast. Within months of Sheldon moving into Kanisha's home, the mask began to slip. For a man who'd spent 12 years being told when to eat, sleep, and shower, civilian life came with an adjustment period. But Sheldon's adjustment quickly turned violent. The man who'd promised to love and protect Kanisha became her biggest threat. Neighbors on McCoy Drive noticed the change. What started as occasional arguments escalated to shouting matches that echoed down the street. Objects crashed against walls, doors slammed. The peaceful home Kanisha had built for her daughters became a war zone. Despite the deteriorating situation, Kanisha became pregnant with Sheldon's child in late 2023. On July 4, 2024, Independence Day, she gave birth to their daughter, Kamaury. The baby arrived prematurely, requiring an extended stay in the NICU. For weeks, Kanisha split her time between hospital visits and caring for her other daughters. When Kamaury finally came home in early August, Kanisha should have been celebrating. Instead, she was walking on eggshells in her own house. A neighbor who spoke to investigators after the murder described hearing more and more fighting in the weeks before the shooting. The arguments got louder after the baby came home, they reported. You could tell things were getting worse. What the neighbors didn't know was that this wasn't the first violent episode between Kanisha and Sheldon. On December 11, 2023, just 8 months before the murder, Richmond County deputies had responded to the same address for a domestic disturbance. According to police reports, when deputies arrived that December night, Kanisha told them Sheldon was intoxicated and had struck her multiple times in the face. She described how he had locked her in their bedroom and wouldn't allow her to leave, continuing to assault her while she was trapped. In desperation, Kanisha had managed to reach her handgun. As they wrestled over the weapon, it discharged, hitting Sheldon in the upper thigh. When deputies found Sheldon, he was bleeding from a gunshot wound. He was transported to a local hospital for treatment. Upon release, he was charged with second-degree kidnapping, assault on a female, and interfering with emergency communications. The kicker? He wasn't granted bond due to the domestic violence nature of the charges. Yet somehow, within months, he was back in Kanisha's home. The system had failed her once. It was about to fail her again. By early August 2024, with a newborn at home and 2 other daughters to protect, Kanisha reached her breaking point. According to those close to her, she told Sheldon she wanted a divorce. She was done with the abuse, done with the fear, done with him. For a man like Sheldon, a man with a history of violence, a man who'd spent most of his adult life in prison, losing control was intolerable. Kanisha wasn't just his wife, she was his provider, his housing, his connection to a normal life.
How do you know? It ain't even my birthday, it is my birthday.
What?
Her rejection wasn't just emotional, it threatened his entire post-prison existence. The December incident should have been the final warning. When a woman shoots a man in self-defense while he's holding her captive, that's not a rough patch in a relationship. That's a 5-alarm fire. That's a neon sign flashing, "Get out now!" But domestic violence is complicated. Victims often return to their abusers an average of 7 times before leaving for good, if they get the chance to leave at all. Kanisha was trying to make that final break. She was doing everything right, setting boundaries, asking for divorce, planning her exit. But she underestimated just how dangerous Sheldon would become when he realized he was losing his grip on her. The December incident wasn't just a warning sign, it was a dress rehearsal for what would happen 8 months later, when Kanisha once again found herself trapped in that bedroom with an enraged Sheldon. Only this time, she wouldn't make it out alive. What would you have done in Kanisha's situation? Let us know in the comments. Sunday, August 4, 2024, the last day of Kanisha Nealy's life. A neighbor spotted Kanisha outside with baby Kamari that morning. They exchanged waves. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Later, another resident noticed Sheldon pacing in the front yard, smoking a cigarette. He appeared agitated, muttering to himself. A man on edge. The first sounds of an argument drifted through the neighborhood. Raised voices from inside the Nealy home, a sadly familiar sound to those living nearby. The argument escalated. A neighbor considered calling the police, but hesitated. They always calm down eventually, they later told investigators. They didn't calm down this time. Phone records show Kanisha made a call to her mother, arranging for her to watch the baby. Her 2 older daughters were already staying with relatives, a decision that would ultimately save their lives. Kanisha was seen leaving the house with Kamari, dropping the infant off with her mother. According to family, she seemed tense but determined. When she returned home alone, a neighbor reported seeing her sit in her car for several minutes before entering the house, as if gathering courage. The argument resumed, louder than before. Witnesses reported hearing Kanisha yell, "I want you out! We're done!" Then came the gunshots, one after another. A neighbor called 911, reporting multiple gunshots from the Nealy residence. Richmond County Sheriff's deputies arrived at the scene. They entered the home and cleared all rooms except for one locked bedroom. As deputies attempted to breach the bedroom door, they heard a single gunshot from inside. When they forced entry, they found Kanisha's body with multiple gunshot wounds. Sheldon lay nearby, dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The scene told the story of Kanisha's final moments. Based on evidence, investigators believe Sheldon cornered Kanisha in the bedroom, the same room where he had trapped her during the December incident. This time, she couldn't reach her weapon. This time, there was no escape. What Sheldon didn't know, or perhaps didn't care about, was that Kanisha had taken precautions to protect her children. All 3 daughters were safely away from the home. Her final act as a mother was ensuring they wouldn't witness or become victims of his violence. Domestic violence experts call the period of separation the most dangerous time for victims. When abusers sense they're losing control, the violence often escalates dramatically. 75% of domestic homicides occur when the victim is attempting to leave or has recently left the relationship. Kanisha was doing everything by the book. She had secured her children. She was clearly stating her boundaries. She was ending the relationship. But the system that should have protected her had already failed once by allowing Sheldon back into her life after the December assault. The reality of prison relationships rarely matches the fantasy. Shows like Love After Lockup romanticize these connections, portraying them as edgy and exciting. Social media is filled with prison pen pal services and prison bae stories. What these glamorized versions leave out is the stark reality. Many incarcerated individuals, especially those with violent histories, bring those same patterns into their relationships upon release. Sheldon's record wasn't hidden. His violent tendencies weren't a mystery. He had spent 12 years in prison for assault with a deadly weapon with intent to kill. Before that, he had convictions for robbery with a dangerous weapon and multiple other violent offenses. The warning signs were flashing red from the beginning. But sometimes, even the strongest, smartest women can be convinced that their love will be the exception, that they'll be the one to change a man's violent nature. Kanisha paid for that belief with her life. Pause and think. What would you tell someone considering a relationship with an inmate? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. In the wake of Kanisha's murder, 3 young girls face a future without their mother. 12-year-old Elia, 5-year-old Jalia, and 1-month-old Kamari. 3 innocent children whose lives were shattered by violence they never witnessed, but will forever bear the scars of. The community of Hoffman rallied quickly. A GoFundMe page titled "Support Kanisha's Daughters After Tragic Loss" was established by her friend Shakira McNair. The description reads, "On August 4, 2024, Kanisha suffered a tragic incident and lost her life. Kanisha, aged 38, wore many hats and made many accomplishments, but of them all she was most proud of being a phenomenal mother to her 3 beautiful daughters." As donations poured in, questions began to surface. How did a man with Sheldon Nealy's violent history end up back in Kanisha's home after a previous domestic violence incident? Why wasn't he still behind bars? The answers lie in his extensive criminal record, a paper trail of violence that spans nearly 3 decades. Sheldon's first convictions came in 1994 for damage to property and possession with intent to sell controlled substances. Between 1994 and 2010, he racked up convictions for resistant to public officer, 1997, possession with intent to sell controlled substances, 1998, assault inflicting serious injury, 1998, multiple driving with revoked license charges, 1999, 2000, 2002, robbery with a dangerous weapon, possession of a firearm by a felon, but the charges that sent him away for 12 years came in 2010. Assault with a deadly weapon with intent to kill, inflicting serious injury, and assault with a deadly weapon inflicting serious injury in Moore County. These weren't minor offenses. These were violent crimes that demonstrated a clear pattern of escalating aggression. Sheldon was released from prison in November 2022, with his parole ending on June 9, 2023. Less than 6 months after completing parole, he was involved in the December 2023 incident with Kanisha. That night, December 11th, 2023, could have been the end of Kanisha's life. According to police reports, Sheldon was intoxicated when he began arguing with Kanisha. He struck her multiple times in the face, locked her in their bedroom, and continued the assault. Trapped and terrified, Kanisha managed to reach her handgun. During the struggle that followed, the gun discharged, hitting Sheldon in the thigh. When deputies arrived, they found Sheldon bleeding. After hospital treatment, he was charged with second-degree kidnapping, assault on a female, and interfering with emergency communications. He was processed into the Richmond County Jail without bond due to the domestic violence nature of the charge. And yet, somehow, he ended up back in Kanisha's home. This is where the system failed catastrophically. A man with a history of violent crime, who had just held a woman captive and assaulted her, should never have been released back to the same address. The December incident wasn't just a red flag, it was a blaring siren, a direct preview of what would happen 8 months later. How did he avoid serious consequences? The answer likely lies in a combination of factors: overburdened courts, plea deals, and the unfortunate reality that domestic violence cases often don't receive the attention they deserve. Perhaps Kanisha, like many victims, was reluctant to testify against him. Perhaps she believed his promises to change. Or perhaps she felt she had no other options. What's clear is that multiple systems failed to protect Kanisha. The criminal justice system, which allowed a violent offender back into the home of his victim, the parole system, which didn't adequately monitor a man with a history of violence, the domestic violence response system, which didn't provide Kanisha with enough support to permanently escape her abuser. The tragedy of Kanisha's death isn't just that it happened. It's that it was preventable. Every step of Sheldon's criminal history pointed toward this outcome. From his first assault charge in 1998 to the December 2023 incident, the pattern was clear. This wasn't a crime of passion or a sudden snap. This was the predictable culmination of decades of violent behavior. Now, 3 young girls will grow up without their mother. They'll celebrate birthdays, graduations, and eventually weddings without Kanisha present. Baby Kamauri will never know her mother except through stories and photographs. And all because a system designed to protect victims like Kanisha repeatedly failed to do its job. Should the justice system do more to protect domestic violence victims? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Kanisha Nealy's story isn't just a tragedy. It's a warning about the dangers that can lurk behind prison walls, behind Facebook messages, behind promises of change and redemption. When considering a relationship with someone who's incarcerated, certain red flags demand attention. First, the nature of their crime matters. Sheldon wasn't in prison for a non-violent offense. He was serving time for assault with a deadly weapon with intent to kill. Violence wasn't a one-time mistake. It was a pattern spanning decades. Second, prison relationships start in a controlled environment. The person behind bars is on their best behavior, closely monitored, with limited ability to show their true nature. What happens when those constraints disappear? Third, the power dynamic shifts dramatically upon release. Suddenly, the formerly incarcerated person depends on their partner for housing, financial support, and reintegration into society. This dependency can breed resentment, especially in men conditioned to view dependency as weakness. For those currently in Kanisha's position, trapped in relationships with escalating violence, resources exist. The National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-723, provides 24/7 support, safety planning, and local resource connections. Text HOME to 741-741 to reach the crisis text line if you can't speak safely. Every state has domestic violence shelters that offer emergency housing, legal advocacy, and counseling services. Many provide specialized support for children who've witnessed abuse. Legal aid organizations can help secure protective orders and navigate the complex legal system, often at no cost to victims. What could have saved Kanisha? The December 2023 incident should have been the final straw. When Sheldon locked Kanisha in their bedroom and she had to shoot him in self-defense, multiple interventions should have followed. Law enforcement should have ensured Sheldon remained in custody, or at minimum, was barred from returning to Kanisha's home. The court system should have prioritized Kanisha's safety over Sheldon's freedom, recognizing the lethality risk factors present in their situation. Domestic violence advocates should have been connected with Kanisha immediately, helping her create a safety plan and access resources to permanently separate from Sheldon. Friends and family could have offered safe housing, childcare, or financial support to help Kanisha leave without fear of homelessness or inability to care for her children. The truth is, leaving an abusive relationship is the most dangerous moment for victims. It requires planning, support, and often intervention from multiple systems. Kanisha tried to leave. She stated her boundaries. She asked for divorce. She did everything right and still lost her life. This isn't just about individual choices. It's about a society that romanticizes prison relationships while failing to protect domestic violence victims. It's about a justice system that repeatedly releases violent offenders back into the homes of their victims. It's about the dangerous myth that love can change someone's violent nature. Kanisha Nealy was more than her relationship with Sheldon. She was a dedicated mother, a healthcare worker who cared for others, a woman who bought her own home and pursued education and career advancement. She was someone's daughter, someone's friend, and most importantly, she was the mother of 3 girls who will now grow up without her. Elia, Jalia, and Kamauri will carry their mother's legacy forward. But they shouldn't have to grow up without her. They shouldn't have to wonder if something could have been done to prevent her death. The most powerful tribute to Kanisha isn't just remembering her story, it's learning from it. It's recognizing the warning signs in our own lives and the lives of those we care about. It's speaking up when we see someone in danger, even when it's uncomfortable. It's demanding better from our systems and institutions. If this story affected you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. You might save a life.